Hey. Hey. No, it's my first one. This is my first YouTube video. I feel very nervous. I don't know why I'm nervous. It's not like I'm in front of people. Hello. My name is Courtney. Hi. I'm an author and a self-published coach. So that means I help people write and publish their own books. This is my first YouTube video. Can you tell? Don't tell me. I have a podcast too, and I recall this feeling very similar when I started my podcast. I did a lot of talking about the weather. It's sunny out here in Canada. Anyway, I help people publish books. Today I want to talk to you about the difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing. If you are someone who owns a business, self-publishing may be a really great complementary option for you alongside the business that you already run. So for example, if you are a coach who specializes in divorce, let's say you're someone who helps people transition after they've had a divorce, you might create a book, a short form content book that's supplementary and helpful for potential clients or current clients, or maybe even like a workbook or a guided journal that prompts them with questions to help them as they're going through the transition from being in a relationship to going through the process of divorce. There are so many different niches where you could add a book or a journal or a workbook or a planner into your existing business. I specialize mostly in nonfiction. However, you could take your fiction book, use some of the tips that I'm suggesting, and self-publish your fiction work. Fiction is a little bit trickier. It's hard to break into fiction if you don't have an established audience already. It's not as easy as you might think to just write the next Harry Potter and like self-publish it. There are some cool things that can happen though, traditional versus self-publishing, wherein you could self-publish your book or a few books and then potentially go down the traditional publishing route afterwards. That has happened. It's an option. It could happen for you. I'm not guaranteeing anything, of course. I have helped multiple authors become authors through the self-publishing route. And so that's what I talk about mostly, but I want to identify the differences between traditional and self-publishing. Traditional publishing is what you've seen in movies, what you've seen in Sex and the City, what you've seen on TV shows when people get a book deal. And I also want to preface this by saying there are pros and cons to both models of traditional and self-publishing. I happen to help my clients go through the self-publishing route, but you don't have to go that way. And also, both ways have pros and cons. So yes, with traditional publishing, you're working with one of the big six, as they like to call it, publishing houses. This is HarperCollins, Penguin, Random House, Hay House, these big names, Simon & Schuster, these big names that you know that a lot of books are published through. These are big publishing companies, and that means they have big budgets. But with that being said, it doesn't always guarantee that they're gonna do the best job promoting your title for you. They might, if you're a huge celebrity, they might put a lot of efforts into getting you on media appearances and working your PR for you, but they might not. If you're a smaller author, you just don't know. There's a lot of different branches off of traditional publishing houses, smaller departments where they work with influencers and up-and-comers. But with traditional publishing, essentially everything is managed by that big company. That means that you release your intellectual property, you release a lot of the creative flexibility and the creativity that goes into your project. This is generally when you see in the movies or on TV, somebody just gets delivered their cover. This is your cover. You may or may not enjoy what your cover looks like, but ultimately it's not really up to you. Again, obviously it's up to the individual publishing house. With the big six publishing, they have a lot more control. They have a lot more in terms of designers and knowledge about covers that sell. And maybe they decide to go a direction that you wouldn't go, but there's an intention behind it. Again, pros and cons to each model. With traditional publishing, it is quite common to get a book advance. And what a lot of people don't know about this book advance is that you could get, a 5-figure advance, which is great and supplements you as you're going through your writing process. But it means that you don't actually make any royalties on the book until that advance has been paid off. It is an advance. It's not just free money, it's an advance. So that's a benefit, because if you're working on writing your book, that can be helpful. If you're a writer, you're probably not making a ton of money if you haven't published anything yet. So getting a book advance it's a bonus for sure. That's a pro. With traditional publishing houses, you submit your manuscript, and with that you submit your IP, intellectual property. And with a traditional publishing house, your royalties are likely going to be a lot lower than they will be if you self-publish. Standard royalties are between 6 and 15% with big 6 traditional publishing houses. And with self-publishing, you get 100% of the royalties that you are eligible for. With self-publishing, the publishing platform will take a cut, but you'll get a much higher percentage, which means if you sell a lower amount of books, like you probably will at the beginning when you first start with self-publishing, you're making more per book versus selling more copies but making less per book with traditional publishing. So what you know about publishing, if you haven't looked into self-publishing at all before, what you know now is probably what you've seen in the movies. Self-publishing allows the author to be in control. It also means that the author needs to do a little bit more of the work, but it means that you're going to reap more of the rewards as well. As I mentioned, the royalties are much higher. So you're making more per book, probably around, between $8 and $12, depending on the print cost of the book and the sale price of the book, versus a 6 to 15% with traditional publishing, which could be only a few dollars per book. Of course, then we're looking at volume. So with traditional publishing, they may be selling hundreds of thousands of copies versus thousands of copies with self-publishing. But again, if you're making more per book and selling less copies, it can work out to be a pretty lucrative space to be in. With self-publishing, you are in control of the process. You maintain the rights to all of your intellectual property. You are responsible for your PR and for your marketing. So again, there are pros and cons. Is it going to be work for you? 100% it's going to be work for you to be able to take your work and do all of the elements required for the self-publishing process. And ultimately that means you need 2 files. You need your cover file and you need your manuscript file. And one of the most difficult parts, whether you're traditional or self-publishing, is actually writing the book or writing the journal or the workbook or the planner, whatever it is that you're doing. Journal, workbook, planner is going to be faster to write than a full book. Either route, earlier I said route and then now I said route. Either way, the writing part is often the most difficult part. Finding the motivation, finding the inspiration in order to craft your manuscript can be the biggest roadblock for you to overcome, no matter which route you wind up going with. If you have questions about self-publishing, obviously I'm brand new to this space, but if you have questions, I would love to create some content that answers those questions for you. And if you're just starting out and you're investigating and you just don't know which direction to go yet, but you do want to start writing a book, make sure you grab a copy of my free download, How the Boop Do I Start Writing a Book? And that's available for you to start planning and mapping out your book today. So how do I end? Is there like a catchphrase? I don't know what to do to say goodbye. Goodbye? Goodbye. Okay, goodbye.